Hi guys, waiting for my partner to join. This is our second edition of Imperfect Parenting. Just waiting for Deepma to join. Once she joins, we'll start this live about why it is not important to be a perfect parent. The last time we had a lot of interesting conversations. We talked about various topics. This time we want to make sure that we respond to the questions that came to us over the last week. A bunch of questions were sent, and I'm just waiting for Deepma to join so that we can start this conversation. Hope everybody's had their cup of tea and ready to join into the conversation. Okay, I think Deepma is just going to come. See. Okay. So just waiting for Deepma to join me and then we can start this conversation. This is Sima Mehta from the Confident Communicator. Excited to be here to talk about some interesting questions that have been sent to us by parents. Waiting for Deepma to just arrive. Okay, looks like she's here. Okay. I'm not able to see you, Deepma. Would you be able to send me a request to join? She said that she has sent me a request. There we go. Approve. Okay. Looks like I've been able to add her, hopefully. There you are. We got better this time.
We did it in 30 seconds. So this is good.
30 seconds. This is fantastic. So, you know what? I was just talking about how last week we talked about so many different topics about imperfect parenting and why it is not so important for people to be perfect as parents, because we all make mistakes and we want to not glorify mistakes. In fact, we want to make mistakes as our friends. And we got a bunch of questions from a lot of parents. So I thought, let's do a very quick live session to address those questions and have a conversation around it. And this time, the question that was sent to us was, how do we, like our kids come back from school?
Let me
Our
just
kids come
interrupt.
back from. Sure.
Just wanted to say thank you so much, parents, for all of your questions. We really appreciated them, and we're going to try to tackle all of them today in our live. So it's going to be a fun Q&A type of a session. Thanks, Sima.
Sure. Sure. That's the idea. The idea is to be interactive, and I'm so happy that so many parents reached out to us and sent us so many questions. But there's one question that a bunch of parents have been talking to us about, so I thought let's address that. The question is that, when our kids come back from school or from some activity and we ask them, hey, how was school today? The standard answer we get is literally a monosyllable, right? It's either good or it's fine or it's okay, right? So how do we as parents engage with our kids so that we get a little bit more than just good?
Oh, that is such an amazing question to start with, especially as a super imperfect parent myself. I have to tell you that I have grappled with this from the time that my children went from being, you know, the kind of kids that wanted to share everything, the color of the teacher's dress to, what they learned, who they played with, what they ate for lunch. And then almost overnight, it seemed as if they just wanted to escape my questions and run into their room and just not talk to me. So every time I'd say, how was school today? Good. With a little roll of the eyes, like, oh God, are you going to ask me this question again? Are you going to expect me to stand here and answer this question? And it was just so sad for me because I was just feeling, oh God, am I losing that connection with my children? Why don't they want to talk to me? And then as I spoke to other parents, I started realizing, you and I talked about it, we started realizing everyone's doing this. All of the teenagers are doing this. And then as we researched a little further, we realized that teenagers do this because they feel judged. They feel attacked. They feel, how was school today? Meaning, what did you do in your math test? How did you do in your assignment? Did the teacher call on you? They're hearing all of these things that we're not saying. And you know what? Most of the time, we're not even intending. but it's
Correct.
coming across like that. So
So it
that's when
sounds like a threat. That's what you're saying. It sounds like a threat.
exactly. And they feel that anything they say can and will be used against them. So that's where the stress comes up, right? And the stress response is if I don't say anything, she can't fire me. She can't yell at me. She can't, whatever. So automatically, we've also moved, as they have moved into being a teenager, we've moved into the moms of teenagers, and our stress also comes through. So I kind of started what's it called? I started um, looking at a different kind of question, and I keep thinking, how can I ask a question that cannot be answered in one word? So I stopped asking how was school today because I would get good. Or,
Yeah.
do you have any homework today, or did you learn anything new today? Nothing. So instead of that, I'd start asking, hey, what did you have? What did Aditya have for lunch today? Did you guys share? Does anyone share lunches in your school? What did you talk about at break? And
Or
somehow
who
I
were you sitting next to in school? Who did you sit next to at lunch? I agree. I think we have to stop asking questions that kind of evoke just one word answers. Like how
that
was your test? Or how is school? Let's not be general. Let's be very specific and let's ask non-threatening questions. That's really valid. Yeah.
100%, 100%. And that's when I started realizing, and obviously it was hard because now, before they came back from school, I was worried. I was thinking, oh God, what am I going to ask them? Because the natural thing is to say, go into what did you do? Did your math test go well? Did your science test go well? Did you get back your marks from your last week's test? All of those
Yes.
questions are bubbling up, and you've got to swallow them and say, hey, what game did you play in sports today? Or something like that. And but that I started realizing from 3 word, 4 word sentences. It started slowly becoming 2 or 3 sentences. Then it started becoming paragraphs, and we started having conversations. Not regularly. There were still times when they wanted to escape. We're all imperfect. However, I started being able to have a conversation rather than a one-word answer.
So what you're saying is that I think what matters is that we have to ask the right questions, and also that what happens is when we ask those kind of threatening questions, the children tend to clam up, and a wall is built between us and our kids, and that's why we see over a period of time those children who are very excited to talk to us no longer want to have very deep conversations. So that's a very valid point. What
Yeah.
else can parents do to engage with their children? What else can they do to engage with their kids and get more than just one simple word? I think one of the things that you mentioned, it kind of leads to the principle of communication, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
communicate with the intention of understanding, not with the intention of questioning, is when I think kids respond more, isn't it?
Yeah, that's such a great point. That just reminds me of one time. I remember my son had promised, he had a test the next day, and he had promised that he would come back he would go down to play from 6 to 7 and come back up at 7 p.m. And he came at about 7:45 or so. And I assure you, every minute of those 45 minutes, I was stressing myself up more and more and more. And I was getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And my natural response when I saw him at the door would be, what the heck? I'm never going to trust you again. I told you to come up at 7. You said you would come up at 7. You never keep your word. The things that we normally do, because those were natural. At that point, I had been in a boiling stew for 45 minutes. And so obviously that was what was going to come up. And all of a sudden, when I saw his face, I don't know what happened to me, but I just said, hey, what happened? And that was that open-ended question that you talked about just now. Talk with the intention of understanding. And he looked at me
Yes.
and he said, Mama, Samarth fell down and his knee was bleeding, and we had to run and get Dettol, and we had to go. And it suddenly became this story, and I felt like I was part of his story. And I was so grateful that I hadn't yelled at him. In fact, I talked to him about it, and then I said, you know what, you're going to have to stay up late at night because you do have a test tomorrow. However, I'm really glad that you told me this, and that's and that you helped your friend. It was a kind
I
thing to
think
do
I
when.
think I think that's really valid because I think we sort of expect some kind of perfection from our children when we ourselves are not very perfect, which leads me to this next point that, when our kids are coming to talk to us, do we really give them that 100% attention that they want? Are we distracted by phones? Are we distracted by social media? Are we distracted by what is going on around us? Or do we leave everything, sit down with our kids and say, okay, let's have this conversation? What do you think about that?
Yeah, someone asked us that. Someone had sent a message early on this week and said, these kids are always so distracted by their devices and they always have the iPad at the table. And how do I stop my child from playing a game at the table? And my first response obviously was to say, ban all devices from the table. But then I started realizing, I started noticing what I was doing. And every time my messages went, ta-ding, I wanted to look at the phone, right? I was
And you
all,
get tempted. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
I am equally addicted. And so
Yeah.
then we sat down because there is that psychological thing about that ding on the phone that makes you feel, I'll just take a quick look. And that's that
Yes.
what you're talking about. They see that and they see that you're not giving them that 100%. So why should they give you 100%, right? When
Actually,
you're
it's very funny because I remember we had done a survey in one of our classes, and we just talked to a bunch of our children, our students, and we asked them. So, if you guys, sit down for dinner, like you're having dinner, do you have dinner with your family or do you eat alone? What does your dinner scene look like? What does typical dinner at home look like? And we were surprised that about 75 to 80% of the kids said they don't eat with their families. In fact, everybody eats at a separate time. And of course, now with the COVID, everybody working from home and people working excessively, I think what is happening is that there is no opportunity for the family to sit together and even have a conversation. So when they said, auntie, what do we do about that? I mean, I feel like that's the critical thing, right? First, we need to be less distracted. Second, we need to create an environment where we can actually give our children the time. And I think dinner time or even a snacks time is such an important time for them to do that. In fact, one of our products that we have, which is the conversation cards, the confident communicators conversation cards, has about 100 cards. And we said, let's play this game. And we tried this out in our class where we asked them very interesting, fun questions, which gave very deep, insightful answers and responses right there. Yes.
right
And
here.
we
Yeah.
suggested the parents of the class to actually try this out at home. So what happened is it brought the family together. Everybody sat down around the table and had this conversation. And it was so non-threatening and it was so beautiful. And the parents' response was that, you know what, we didn't know that our kids think in this way. So I think it's very important for us to create that time when we can actually sit down and talk to our kids, right?
No, yeah. One of those conversations that we had with it was at a graduation of one of our classes, I think, and the parents brought up these cards and they said, guys, there were questions in there that sometimes had us stumped in the sense of, how do we answer that? Let's think about this. For example, there's one question that said, describe your family in with two adjectives. And the kids had these answers like, fun, exciting, adventurous. And the parents were thinking, oh my God, I have to describe my kids with two adjectives. And I'm thinking of inane adjectives like nice and good and sweet and kind instead of these exciting adjectives that the kids are thinking of. And they were saying, oh, these really prompt reflection. And that's what we're saying. Let's bring dinner back and let's try to reflect maybe on just one question. There's another really cool question in there that my kids and I love, which is name one family tradition that you would want to change or
Change. Ah,
start,
yeah.
right? And our students give us such amazing answers. Our kids give us such amazing answers. And as parents, we're going, wow, if I hadn't asked this question, I wouldn't have known. So it's a 2-minute question, 3-minute question, but bring family dinner times back, I would say, if you want to have
I
conversations.
agree. I think that sort of helps kids to feel a little bit less threatened, and it opens up the environment for conversation for sure. Just the last one point I thought I wanted to add here is about us. While we are being imperfect parents, and we kind of love that terminology, imperfect parents, I think we should also exhibit some kind of vulnerability. For example, supposing you had a bad day at work. You had a bad day at work, and you're very frustrated about something. How do we engage with our kids by opening up our vulnerability? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I know that my kids respond very well to some when I open up and I say, when I was younger. See, most kids, when you start a sentence with "when I was younger," they just roll their eyes and say, "Oh God, we're going to have to encounter the perfect youth that my parents had." But if I say when I was younger, I used to really have a hard time completing my work. I still am, as you know, Sima, I still am a classic procrastinator. And so I'd always say I always had a hard time completing my work. And I think now that I'm an adult, I realize why I did it. I used to procrastinate because then when I did it at the last minute, even if it wasn't a great, amazing, fabulous project or research paper, I could tell myself, hey, I did it in the last minute. What do you expect? 30 minutes of work, this is good enough. And I'd convince myself of that. So now I'm thinking, now that I know that, why not start planning better? So is there something I can help you with where you're having a hard time and you're doing
Yeah.
something, but you're not exactly sure why? And I've noticed that they do come back. There are times when they say, no, mom, we're okay, we're fine, back off. But there are other times when they say, yeah, that's true. How can,
Yeah, i
how
think i think it's also I think it's also the fact that we don't have to be. We are actually, when you show yourself as a vulnerable parent, what it does is it says that, I think kids think that parents are perfect, they know everything, but
yeah,
that's not true. And I think that's where we get that comfort of, oh, you know what, I also messed up. Like last time we talked about, my daughter trying to do cycling, and then she falls off and she says, I give up. And we say, oh, you know what, I fell some 20, 30 times, and I
yeah,
still went on and on, and I kept trying. So the idea of vulnerability in parents is that we don't have to show ourselves to be perfect all the time. There can be times when we can let our guards down, so that the kids feel like that is a normal thing, and it's acceptable to make mistakes. It's okay to ask for help. I think those are the things that will make our children to be, I think, more engaging with us, more open minded, and also more resilient. So I think those are the interesting points. And yeah, you
yeah.
had something.
To sum up just really quickly and say, yeah, I mean, don't give social media and the kids on social media a bad name all the time. We're all equally addicted. Let's accept it, let's admit it, and then let's ask each other for help and say, guys, even when my phone dings, I desperately want to see who sent me a message or what's the new Instagram thing. But I'm going to keep my phone aside for just 10 minutes. Can you guys do the same with me? And let's see who needs to pick up their phone first, right? And that might help them listen to that and might help them agree to that instead of bringing down that rule, right? We tend to
Yeah,
all the time
yeah.
bring down rules and say, okay, now new rule today, new family rule, we're never going to have phones at the table. And the next minute it dings, you say, okay, this was an important call, I have to take it. And you're sending them those mixed messages, and
Wrong signal. Yeah, it's a mixed signal. Correct.
that gets.
So you know what?
I was wrong. I'm sorry. I looked at my phone. Can we decide on a punishment for me or something like that? My kids love punishing me.
So you know what? I think this was a great conversation, and I think we wanted to make this really quick. But here are the three things that we are going to actually put in our comments. One, we have actually created a video that sort of addresses this point about how to engage with our kids, and we will be posting that on this group very soon. Second, in case you guys are interested, we have something very very interesting for you, which is how to ace your exam. There is a video that we've been sharing. Even last week we had shared that video. We'll send you a link on that as well. And lastly, also, if anybody's interested in the conversation cards, I think we can put in a link to that as well, isn't it?
I will. Yeah. I was
So
trying
the one request.
right now, but I'm afraid if I put in a link, will the camera go away? So I'm trying not to mess with it right now. We'll put it in the once the
We'll put
videos.
it after this chat is over. So, if we're going to do this every week, a very short, quick answering the questions. Thank you so much for sending the questions earlier, also, and we will address every single question that a parent sends. Please post your questions on our Facebook page or send us a message on Instagram or email us. And thank you again for joining us on this session of Imperfect Parenting. And we will see you again next week. Thanks, Deepa, for being there with me today.
Thank you, Seema. And guys, do send us your questions and do send us some. If you have any suggestions for topics that you want us to address, please send us those as well.
All
Bye,
right,
everyone.
guys. Continue being an imperfect parent, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.